Hello and welcome back to another episode of A Cozy Christmas Podcast. I'm your host, Art. Well, happy September, everyone. We have finally made it to the Burr months. In early September, we had some wonderful fall-like weather, and then the warmer temps came back, but I'm hoping that fall will get here and I can really enjoy the best time of the year, that fall and early winter of December, my favorite time. If for no other reason, my allergies finally clear up from the summer. The other day, Grace and I had a chance to go to Hobby Lobby, and I love going to stores like that and just looking at their Christmas decorations. And they had some out, but I picked up a new fall candle. It is pumpkin maple custard flavored. Not flavored because you don't eat candles, but that's the smell. And it smells delightful. So I hope you have a wonderful candle burning at your side. And like me, you're enjoying a good cup of coffee. Because fall is on its way and it can't get here quick enough. I really don't have a lot of announcements or anything else for today's episode other than our story, but I did want to really quick give an update on our book club. We've started reading The 12 Sleighs of Christmas by Jaqueline Frost. It's a cozy mystery set at a Christmas tree farm in Maine. We've just started reading. It's not too late to join with us. You can go to our Facebook page or YouTube page and you'll find instructions there on how to get to the book club hangout on Discord, as well as the weekly chapters we're covering. And as we read this book, I'll be posting some of my thoughts and clues that might be important in solving the mystery. I have been really looking forward to starting up our book club again, and I'm so glad and I'm thankful for those of you who are coming along with us this time. So we'll finish this book by October 25th, and then we'll have a few weeks off, and I'll pick another book to read in November and early December. All right, well, come on in, make yourself at home. It's time for another cozy Christmas story. I had thought about reading a Christmas ghost story that I came across. That was pretty fun, but I think I'm going to wait on that until later in October, as I do enjoy reading some of the scary Victorian ghost stories in the month of October. But I found one that I think will be really enjoyable for you, especially if you're an animal lover. And that's all I'll say about it for now. But the story today is called Angela's Christmas, and it's by an author named Julia Schayer. Now, Julia Schayer was born on January 7th, 1842, and passed away March 29th, 1928. She's an American writer. She's known for her short stories, and she was also born in Maine, where our cozy mystery that we're reading takes place. Her father was a clergyman. As a young girl, she had a beautiful singing voice and was known for her singing voice. Her first husband died shortly after the Civil War, and one of the daughters she had with him, Leonora Spire, was a poet and won the 1927 Pulitzer Prize for Poetry. Then her second husband was George Schayer, and she had additional children with him. So she wrote a lot of short stories, but today she's not as well known, which is too bad because this is a wonderful story. I don't know when this story was originally published, but I found it in a collection called A Budget of Christmas Tales by Charles Dickens and others. And it was published by the Christian Herald, and this copyright is 1895 by Lewis Klopsch. There is another story in here that I've read called Billy's Santa Claus Experience by Cornelia Redmond, and that was one of my earlier stories I read. So if you don't remember that, go ahead and take a look. But in this collection, there are several stories that I don't know about, but then also there are a handful of stories, Christmas stories by Dickens, including A Christmas Carol. And since this book was published 20, 30 years after Dickens died, they're really wanting to capitalize on the Dickens name there. And Charles Dickens had nothing to do with this publication, of course. So today's story is called, again, Angela's Christmas. It's about a young lady named, believe it or not, Angela. And we find Angela wanting to do something for charity at Christmas time. So be prepared for a story with morals and a story of redemption, but let's not forget the lessons they can still teach us today, right? All right, settle in here. Here's a cup of coffee for you. And let me turn up the Christmas fireplace, and I'll read to you Angela's Christmas by Julia Schayer. Then it is yes, Father dear, said Angela, looking across the breakfast table with a smile. It was her mother's smile, and the girl had filled her mother's vacant chair for more than a year. The eyes of the father and daughter met, and Angela knew, before a word was said, that she had conquered. I hate to see you at your age beginning to worry over these things, Ephraim Fraser said regretfully. Let the old woman take care of the charities, dear. You keep on dancing in the sunshine a while longer, daughter. Angela's smile grew graver, but not less sweet. I am 20, dear, she said. Too old to dance all the time, and I cannot help thinking, you know. And it's no use, Papa dear. I must do something. It is, yes, isn't it? You are sure you won't mind being criticized and ridiculed? Quite sure, answered Angela. And sure you won't take your failures and disappointments to heart too deeply? Quite sure I can bear them bravely, answered the girl. If only one, just one, of those poor creatures may be helped and lifted up and brought out of darkness, it will be worth trying for. And what does Robert Johns say about it? A glow kindled in Angela's face. Robert is in perfect sympathy with me, she said softly. Then again, this time having risen and gone around to his side to speak with her face against the old banker's smoothly shaven cheek. It is, yes, isn't it, Daddy dear? Well, yes, only you must go slow, dear. You are not overstrong, you know. And soon it came to pass that on a vacant lot, hitherto given over to refuse heaps, haunted by stray cats, rag pickers, and vagrant children, in one of the vilest quarters of the metropolis, there sprang up with magic swiftness a commodious frame building surrounded by smooth green sod, known in the lower circles as the Locust Street Home. In upper circles, laughingly denominated Angela's Experiment. Angela did not mind. It was mostly good-natured laughter, and many of the laughters ended by lending willing hands and hearts to the cause. It was wonderful how the news spread through the city's purlieus that here was a sanctuary into which cold, hunger, and fatigue dared not intrude, a place which the lowest might enter and be made welcome and go unquestioned. His personal rights as carefully respected as though he were one of the 400. That was Angela's theory. No man, woman, or child should be compelled to anything. First, make their bodies comfortable, then surround them with ennobling influences and examples, entertain them, arouse them, stimulate them, hold out the helping hand, and leave the rest to God. They shall not even be compelled to be clean, she said, laughing. If the beautiful clean bathrooms and clean clothing do not tempt them to cleanliness, then so be it. I will have no rules, only influences. You will see. And people did see, and wondered. Sometimes on warm, pleasant evenings, the spacious, cheerful hall with its tables and chairs would be almost empty. But On nights like that on which this story opens, a dark, cold December night, the seats were apt to be well filled, mostly with slatternly, hard-featured women and dull-faced children, who sat staring stolidly about, while the music and speaking went on, half stupefied by the warmth and tranquility so foreign to their lives. Outside, a dismal sleet was falling, but from the open door of the vestibule, a great sheet of light fell upon the wet pavement, and above it glowed a transparency bearing the words, "A Merry Christmas to all! Come in!" It was while the singing was going on, led by a high, sweet girl's voice, that a human figure came hobbling out from a side street and stopped short at the very edge of the lighted space. A woman, by her dress, an old woman with a seamed, blotched face, an ugly human wreck, all torn and battered and discolored by the storms of life. Such was old Marge, Loony Marge, as she was called in the haunts that knew her best. Her history? She had forgotten it herself, very likely, and there was no one to know or care, no one in the wide world to care if she should at any moment be trampled to death or slip from the dock into the Black River. The garret which lodged her would find another tenant, the children of the gutters another target for their missiles. Not that she was worse than others, only that she was old and ugly and sharp of tongue, and the world, even her world, has no use for such as she. For some time this forlorn creature continued to hover on the edge of the lighted space. The sleet had become snow, and already a thin white film covered the pavement, promising a white Christmas. And the cold increased from moment to moment. The woman drew her filthy shawl closer. Her jaws chattered, yet she seemed unable to tear herself from the spot. Her eyes, alert under their gray brows as a rat's, were fixed now upon the open door, now upon the transparency, yet she made no motion toward the proffered shelter. Two men, hirsute and ragged, stopped near her, and, after a moment's consultation, slunk across the square of light and disappeared into the building. As the door was opened, there came a fuller burst of song and a rush of warm air, fragrant with the aroma of coffee and oysters. The old woman's body quivered with desire. Food, warmth, rest, all that her miserable frame demanded, were there within easy reach, for the mere asking, nay, for the mere taking. Yet still the devils of stubbornness and spite would not let go their hold upon her. But finally, as a bitter blast swept through the snow stingingly against her face, she uttered a hoarse snarl, and glancing about to see that no jeering eye was upon her, the poor creature crept across the pavement, clambered up the stone steps, and, pushing open the door, slipped into the nearest vacant seat. The chairs and benches were unusually well filled. Numbers of women and children were in the foreground. A few men were also present, sitting with their bodies hanging forward, their hats tightly clutched between their knees, their eyes fixed on the floor. The women and children, on the contrary, followed every movement of the young women on the platform with furtive eagerness. The simplicity of attire which Angela and her friends had assumed did not deceive even the tiniest gutter child present. These were ladies, and one and all accorded them the same tribute of genuine, if reluctant, admiration. Old Marge, after the embarrassment of the first moment, took everything in with one hawk-like glance. The Christmas greens upon the clean white walls, the curtained space in the rear which hid some pleasant mystery, the men and women on the platform. At the organ sat a young girl, leaning upon the now silent keys, her face toward the young man who was speaking. Old Marge could not take her eyes from this face, white, serious, sweet, set in a halo of pale golden hair. The sight of it aroused strange feelings in the bosom of the old outcast. Fascinated, tortured, bewildered, she sat and gazed. It was long since she had thought of her youth. This girl reminded her of that forgotten time. Like a violet flung upon a refuse heap, the thought of her own innocent girlhood lay for an instant upon the foul mass of memories accumulated by 60 miserable years. I was light-hearted too, ran old Marge's thoughts, light-haired and light-complected like her. The perfume of that thought breathed across her soul and was gone. Still she gazed from under her shaggy brows, and without meaning to listen, found herself hearing what the speaker was saying. He was telling, without rhetoric or cant, the story of Christ, and with simplicity and tact presenting the lesson of his life. The joy of giving, of sacrificing for others, the young man was saying in his earnest, musical voice, so far beyond the joy of receiving, is within the reach of every human being. Think of that! The poorest man or woman or child who breathes on earth tonight may know this joy, may give some pleasure, some help, some comfort to some fellow creature. Whether it be a human creature or a dumb beast matters not. It is all one in God's sight, being an act of love and kindness and sacrifice. Old Marge looked down upon her squalid rags. Her rough features writhed with a scornful smile. That's a lie, she muttered. What could the likes of me do for anybody, I'd like to know? Still, she listened. But at last, as the warmth stole through her sodden garments and into her chilled veins, and the peace of the place penetrated the turbulent recesses of her soul, the man's voice became like a voice heard in a dream, and the old outcast slept. A confused sound greeted her awakening. Someone was playing the organ jubilantly. People were moving about, girls with trays loaded with steaming dishes. Children were talking and laughing excitedly. The curtain had been drawn, and a great Christmas tree almost blinded her with its splendor. She stared about in bewilderment. She looked at the tree, at the people, at her own foul rags. A fierce revulsion of feeling swept over her. Rage, shame, a desire to get out of sight, to be swallowed up in the darkness and misery which were her proper element, seized and mastered her. She staggered to her feet. A young girl approached her with a tray of tempting food. The sight and smell of it goaded the starved creature to madness. She could have fallen upon it like a wolf, but instead she pushed the girl roughly aside and fumbled dizzily at the doorknob. A hand was laid upon her arm. The girl with the sweet white face was looking at her with a friendly smile. Won't you stay and have something warm to eat before going into the cold? The girl asked gently. Old Marge shook the hand from her arm. No, she snarled. I don't want nothing. Let me go. With a patient smile, Angela opened the door. I am sorry you will not stay, she said softly. It would give me great pleasure. There is a gift for you on the tree, too. It is Christmas Eve, you know. A hoarse, choking sound came from the woman's lips. She pushed by into the vestibule. Angela followed. If you should feel differently tomorrow, she said, in her kind, gentle voice, come here again about 11 o'clock. I shall be here. Without waiting for a reply, she re-entered the hall. A young man, the same who had been speaking, met her at the door. Angela, he exclaimed, you should not be out there in the cold. She smiled absently. Did you see her, Robert? That terrible old woman? Yes, I saw her. A hopeless case, I fear. Angela's eyes kept their absent look. It was awful to see her go away like that into the cold and snow, hungry and half-clad, she said. The young man leaned nearer. Angela, he whispered, you must not let these things sink into your heart as you do, or you cannot bear the work you have undertaken. As for that old creature, it is terrible to think of her, but she seemed to me beyond our reach. But not beyond God's reach through us, said Angela. Meantime, old Marge was facing the storm with rage and pain in her face and in her heart. The streets were deserted, and lighted only by such beams as found their way through the dirty windows of shops and saloons. From these last came sounds of revelry and contention, and at one or another the poor creature paused, listening without fear to the familiar hubbub. Should she go in? Someone might give her a drink to ease for a time the terrible gnawing at her breast. Might? Yes, but more likely she would be thrust out with jeers and curses. And for some reason, old Marge was in no mood to use the caustic wit and ready tongue that were her only weapons. So she staggered on until the swarming tenement was reached, stumbled up the 5 flights of unillumined stairs, and almost fell headlong into the dismal garret which she called her home. Feeling about in the darkness, she found a match and lit a bit of candle which stopped the neck of an empty bottle. It burned uncertainly, as if reluctant to disclose the scene upon which its light fell. A smoke-stained, sloping ceiling, a blackened floor, a shapeless mattress heaped with rags, a deal box, a rusty stove resting upon 2 bricks, supporting in its turn an ancient frying pan, a chipped saucer, and a battered tin can from which, when the scavenger business was good, old Marge served afternoon tea. Such were her home and all her personal belongings. There was no fire, nor any means of producing one, but upon the box was spread a piece of paper containing a slice of bread and a soup bone, whereto clung some fragments of meat, the gift of a neighbor hardly less wretched than herself. The old woman's eyes glittered at the sight, and, seizing the food, she sank weakly upon the box and began gnawing at it. But her toothless jaws, stiff with cold, made no impression upon the tough meat and hard crust, and letting them drop to the floor, the poor creature fell to rocking to and fro, whimpering tearlessly like a suffering dog. Strangely enough, within the withered bosom of this wretched creature, there had welled up, from some hidden source of womanly feeling, a passionate self-pity, a no less passionate self-loathing. This was what a moment's contact with all that she had so long abjured, purity, order, gentleness, had brought to pass. That fair young girl, tall, pale, sweet as an Easter lily, stood before her like an incarnate memory, pointing toward the past, the far distant past, when she too was young and pretty and innocent and gay, too pretty and too gay for a poor working girl. That was where the trouble began. I was light-haired too, moaned old Marge, twisting her withered fingers restlessly. Light-haired and light-complected, a pretty girl and a good girl too, not like her. No, how could I be? Little the likes of her knows what the likes of me has to face, Lord. The bit of candle guttered and went out. The cold increased. It had ceased snowing, and a keen wind had arisen, tearing the clouds into shreds through which the stars gleamed. And presently the moon climbed up behind the belfry of the old church across the square, and sent one broad white ray through the dingy window and across the floor. All at once the great bell began to strike the midnight hour, its mingled vibrations filling the garret with tumultuous sounds. The vision of the fair girl faded, and old Marge was herself again a hard, bitter, rebellious old woman, with a burning care where her heart had been, and only one thought, one desire left in her desperate mind, the thought and the desire of death. In young and passionate days, she had often thought of seeking that way out of life's agonies. But at its worst, there is always some sweetness left in the cup. When one is young, it was not so now. The dregs only had been hers for many a year, and she had enough. Death. Yes, that was best. Her eyes glittered as she cast a look about the silent room. Bare even of the means to this end. Ah, the window. With an inarticulate cry, the woman arose and hobbled along the shining moon ray to the window and threw open the sash. Awed by the stern beauty of the heavens, the splendor of the moon tangled in the lace-like carvings of the belfry, as in a net, She leaned some moments against the sill, looking out and down. Far below lay the deserted square, its white bosom traced with the sharp shadow of the tower. With a keen eye, old Marge measured the distance. A sheer descent of 50 feet. Nothing to break the fall. Nothing. One movement. A swift fall, and that white surface would be broken by a black, shapeless heap. A policeman would find it on his next round, or some drunken reveler would stumble over it, or the good people on their way to early mass. Ha! The seamed countenance lit up suddenly with a malignant joy. Why not wait until they began to pass, those pious, respectable people in their comfortable furs and wools, and cast herself into their midst, a ghastly Christmas offering from poverty to riches, from sin to virtue? The suggestion commended itself highly to her sense of humor. With a hoarse chuckle, she was about to close the window when a portion of the shadow that lay alongside the chimney showed signs of life, and rising on 4 long and skinny legs became a cat, a lean black cat, which crept meekly toward the window, its phosphorescent eyes gleaming, its lank jaws parted in a vain effort to mew. Startled, old Marge drew back for an instant. Then, glancing from the animal to the pavement below, a brutal cunning, a malicious pleasure lit up the witch-like features. Reaching out one skinny arm, she called coaxingly, "Puss! Puss!" The cat dragged herself up to the outstretched arm, rubbing her lank body caressingly against it. The cruel, cunning old face softened suddenly. "Lord," muttered old Marge, "if she ain't trying to purr. Wall, that beats me." The poor beast continued its piteous appeal for aid, arching its starved frame, waving its tail, fawning unsuspectingly against the arm that had threatened. With an impulse new to her misery-hardened heart, old Marge drew the animal in and closed the window. Far from resisting, the cat nestled against her with every sign of pleasure. "She's been somebody's pet," said the old woman, placing her on the floor. "She ain't always been like this." The divine emotion of pity, so new to this forlorn creature, grew and swelled in her bosom. The man at the hall had not lied, after all. Here was another of God's creatures, as miserable as herself, nay, more so, for she had a roof to shelter her, and she could share it with this homeless one. "Oh, poor puss," muttered old Marge, stroking the rough fur. "You're starving too, ain't ye? And I ain't got nothing to give you, not a bite or a sup." "Ah!" Her eyes had fallen upon the discarded food. Eagerly she seized it and placed it before the cat. The starving creature gnawed greedily at the bone an instant, then looked up with a hopeless mew. The old woman felt a keener pang of pity. "Poor beast," she said with a bitter smile. "You can't eat him, can you? No more could I. We're in the same box, puss, old and toothless and nobody belonging to us. We'll have to starve together, I guess. And it's Christmas Day. Did you know that, puss? Christmas Day. Lord, Lord." The cat rubbed against her skirts, her eyes fixed upon her benefactors. "Seems to understand every word I say," old Marge muttered. "If only I had a drop of milk for her now." Hobbling to the stove, she examined the battered tin can, letting the moonlight shine into its rusty depths. A little water or tea remained in it, and with this she moistened some of the bread and placed it before the cat, which devoured it now eagerly. Then she took the animal in her arms and laid herself down on the mattress, drawing the ragged covers over them. The cat nestled against her side. The warmth of the 2 poor bodies mingled, and both slept. The moon ray crept along and spread itself over the heap of rags, the knotted fingers resting on the cat's rough fur, the seamed old face. It passed away, and morning dawned with a peal of bells and the sound of footsteps on the pavement below, and still the 2 slept on. Angela stood near the door, receiving her Christmas guests. They came straggling in, in twos and threes, some boldly and impudently, some shamefaced and shy, some eager, some indifferent, but all poverty-pinched. Each one was pleasantly welcomed and passed on to the feast. Angela watched and waited, and at last the door opened slowly to admit old Marge, who stopped short on the threshold with a look at once stubborn, appealing, suspicious, ashamed. Like a wild animal on the alert for the faintest sign of repulsion or danger, she stood there, but Angela only smiled, proffering her white, soft hand, destitute of jewels, but the hand of a lady. "A Merry Christmas," she said brightly. "I was ugly to you last night," said old Marge huskily, ignoring the beautiful hand she dared not touch. "Never mind," Angela answered sweetly. "You were tired." "I am a bad old woman," said old Marge mistrustfully. "Never mind that either," said Angela. "Let me be your friend. If you will, you shall never be cold or hungry again." A profound wonder came into the old face. Then it began to writhe, and from each eye oozed scant tears, seeking a channel amid the seams and wrinkles of the sunken cheeks. "You will let me be your friend," urged Angela. Still old Marge wept silently, the scant tears of age. "You shall have a pleasant home and—" A swift, suspicious glance darted from the wet eyes. "Not asylum, miss, please," said the old woman. "No," said Angela quietly, "not an asylum. A home. A bright, clean, comfortable home." I can work, miss," put in old Marge, doubling her knotted hands to show their strength. I can wash and scrub." "Yes," said Angela, "you may work all you are able, helping to keep things clean and comfortable." Still old Marge looked doubtful, wiping her cheeks with a corner of the shawl she half turned toward the door. "Have you a family or anyone belonging to you?" asked Angela, thinking to have reached the root of the difficulty. "Yes," said the old woman stoutly. "I have a cat. Where I go, she must go too." Angela patted the grimy hand with a laugh, which was good to hear. "I understand you perfectly," she said. "I have a cat of my own. You and your cat shall not be separated." A half hour later entered the young man Robert. Angela pointed silently to old Marge, sitting in a warm corner, contentedly munching her Christmas dinner. "What have you done to her?" he asked. "She looks more human already." Angela laughed again, the same laugh which goes to one's heart so. "I have adopted her and her cat," she answered. "That's all." The end. That was Angela's Christmas by Julia Schayer. I love Angela's approach to kindness. That she wanted to set up this shelter, this place to have food in a home for those in need with no expectations. And that honestly got me thinking about how we do things like giving. Sometimes there are expectations attached to it. Like, I know churches will often have food drives and reach out to those who might be in need and help out with some needed thing like food or clothes or gas or whatever. And in my experience, it's been that we do those things so that we can tell them about Jesus and have them come to our church and, become members eventually or something like that. There has been this expectation attached to it that if they don't do those things after what we've done, then that program or that activity has failed. But might I suggest this story teaches us, why don't we give and help just for the sake of doing it with no expectations in return? Just a simple act of kindness can change a life. And I like that dynamic between Angela and her boyfriend, I guess, or fiance maybe, Robert, who, when he saw old Marge, he's kind of like looking at her the way some would, like, oh, she's beyond hope. She's beyond help. We should just give up and not try. But Angela extended an act of kindness to her. And I think old Marge even picked up on a little bit of what Robert was saying. It sounds like Robert doesn't even believe what he himself was saying in his own sermon. But old Marge was brought to this point of absolute destitution. She had barely anything left. And she went from wanting to take her own life to wanting to do it in a way that was spiteful. Like, I'm going to wait until people are on their way to church and walking by the building, and then I'm going to throw myself out of this upstairs window and kill myself. She's brought to a very dark place. And then just this one little spark of hope. She sees this cat. She sees something else in need. And that, I think that little act of kindness that Angela showed her sparked something in Marge. And she shows this little act of kindness towards this poor, piteous creature who was even in a worse condition than Marge was. And then they slept peacefully that night and warmly. And I got to admit, when I first read this story, I thought they were going to die. And if that were the case, I would not have been reading this story on this podcast, okay? I don't like stories that end like that. But I was very happy to see that they survived the night. And she comes back to Angela and accepts her help and her promises. It's just a beautiful story of kindness, of using Christmas to truly demonstrate how God gives to us. He gives without expectations, because we could not repay God his kindness that he has shown us, that he has shown me. And that's really what Christmas is all about, if you take it from the religious standpoint. That God gave a great gift in Jesus Christ, and he came because he loved us. Thank you for listening to the story. I hope it left you in a warm and cozy mood to go out and do an act of kindness for someone with no expectations other than just being a nice person. We need people like that in our world today. There are a lot of people who are alone and scared and homeless and hungry. How can we help? That is a way we can keep Christmas in our hearts all year long. I'd love to hear from you. If you have a Christmas memory or tradition you'd like to share with me, tell me about it. Send me an email to cozychristmaspodcast@gmail.com, and I'll feature that in an upcoming episode. Also, if you had any questions for Gracie you'd like to ask, about questions about Christmas, about life, the universe, anything, she's up to answering those for you. Can't wait to see what Christmas 2025 will bring us this year. If you want to help get the word out about our podcast, leaving a 5-star review or sharing this on social media would be a great way to do that. I'm on all the podcasting platforms like Apple, Spotify, many others. You can find us so easily by going to cozychristmaspodcast.com. Also in the show notes are ways you can help support the podcast in a financial way, and I can send you a bookmark or sticker and a Christmas card as my way of saying thanks. So until next time, let us remember to honor Christmas in our hearts and try to keep it all the year. Have a very Merry Christmas.